A year and a half ago, I wrapped up the 3-year journey that was taking this car from a pile of poo to a pile of ooh. Now, I've only owned it half as long as a functional car than I have as a project, but I think enough time has passed for me to have some thoughts on it. I made a post right here on YouTube as well as on Instagram saying I wanted to do this update video and for you guys to ask me whatever questions you had. So I'm going to do my best to get you guys up to speed on everything that's been going on. First and foremost, after a year and a half, the car still looks great. For being honest here, it could definitely benefit from a thorough polish, but it looks good. The interior looks fantastic too. I mean, the new seat covers, carpet, headliner, and everything else cleaned up. Like, it looks exactly like it came out of the factory. As far as cosmetics are concerned, like everything regarding that is holding up really, really well. But more than just how it looks, I gotta say just how fun it is to actually drive. This car is really just such a blast to drive. Like, it's so much fun. And I know that it's very possible for there to be a honeymoon period where eventually the rose-colored glasses come off and you start seeing all the faults and you don't like it anymore, but hey, even without rose-colored glasses, this car is still red. It is such a blast to drive. I love it. I love it. It's great. But I do have to say that even though it is so great, and it really is, it absolutely still is a vintage car. It's almost 40 years old. As far as comfort goes, for drivability, road noise, and all that, it does not compare to anything made in like the last 10 years. Even after everything I did to it, sound deadening and just the complete overhaul that I did, it still has some creaks and rattles and some very apparent road noise. Now, it's not to the point where it's enough to complain about, but it is there and it can't go unacknowledged. So as you guys know, I had a 1988 Fiero GT in high school. So getting used to driving a vintage car, and a Fiero specifically, wasn't exactly new to me. That is jet black. I will say, I wasn't sure how the car was going to handle, because the version that I had, the 1988, that is the one with the revised and completely unique suspension. This version of the Fiero that I have is the one with the front suspension from a Chevy Chevette as the front suspension, and the front suspension from the Chevy Citation as the rear suspension. This system here isn't exactly a race car spec. I did drive the car a handful of times during the restoration process, but never really enough to get a feel for how it actually drives. When I originally drove it, that was with the suspension completely just like old and deteriorating. And when I drove it in part 7 after the engine rebuild, the rear suspension at that point was fully refurbished, but the front suspension was still the original worn out rubber and everything. And when I finally did refurbish the front suspension, I immediately tore all the body panels off and didn't drive the car until it was absolutely finished and everything was back together. And also at that point, that was when I installed the lowering springs on the car. If you remember, for whatever reason, the car had like a weird rake where it was tilting upward, and so I had to install the lowering springs to get everything leveled back out. Perfect. But with everything back together now and everything fully refurbished, I can confidently say that the car handles very, very well, especially for being a parts bin Frankenstein hodgepodge of different models. I remember receiving a lot of comments saying that there's going to be some issues with having the stiff lowering springs in the front and the factory softer springs at the rear, but I legitimately have not experienced any issues with drivability. Maybe on a racetrack or an autocross course, there might be some handling issues where it's a little sketchy, but for road driving, it's perfect. Oil pressure is good. Now, as far as power goes, there's a noticeable lack thereof in that department. From the factory, there was only about, oh my god, they're so dirty. There was really only about 90 horsepower from these engines, so not really a whole lot. Which is probably why I received so many comments both throughout the series on this car as well as the announcement post for this video, asking if I'm ever going to do an engine swap. There are so many tried and true candidates, and plus lots of documentation to make any of those options easily doable myself. Have you guys ever noticed that I never once cleaned the trunk throughout the series, and I still haven't cleaned the trunk to this day? Like seriously, good God, this is so messy. Here's a bad ICM, the original air cleaner, the original brake pads that were on the car that I had to pull off to get one of the wheels to free up. I should probably clean this. Oh wow. Regarding engine swaps though, I really don't have any desire to do that. There's an expression that basically goes, it's a lot more fun to drive a slow car fast than it is to drive a fast car slow. I think for any vehicle that rings true. I know on my little 2-stroke 100cc motorcycle that I have, it was exhilarating going 50 miles an hour, but on my old ZR7, my butthole wasn't puckering until I was going 100. Having the Iron Duke, the 2.5 liter engine exactly as it is now, and having to really give it the beans just to merge onto the highway, it's just a blast. It's a blast. I think the fastest I've gone in this car was 90 miles an hour, and that was on the way to Austin, Texas, on the interstate going downhill. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. I like powerful cars. I do. It's just not what I want the Fiero to be. Because having a time capsule from the 1980s is just so much fun. At gas stations or car shows, people go, "Is that a Fiero? I haven't seen one of those in ages." And seeing them smile and get mentally taken back to a previous point in their life is just so cool. And plus, with the Iron Duke engine, I'm averaging like 28 miles per gallon, so cool. I think the only real modification I would do to bring this car to the modern era would be to add power steering. Now, the Fiero does have a pretty big steering wheel, so when I'm slowly navigating the JCPenney parking lot, it's not too terribly difficult to use, but having a little less input force required might be nice. There's plenty of people who have done electric power steering conversions on these cars, so it's definitely an option. But again, it's not necessary. The steering, how it is now, is nowhere near bad enough for me to not want to actually drive this car. And that right there is a question that a lot of you guys were asking me in the comments. Do I actually drive the car? Of course I drive the car. Of course. Are you kidding me? I said at the end of the restoration series that I don't want this thing to be a museum piece for me to just look at, or a trailer queen that never actually sees the road. It's a car, and I drive it. However, if I'm being 100% honest, I don't drive it as much as I would like to. It's literally only been just shy of 1,000 miles I put on this thing in the past year and a half. That's not a lot. Now I want to put lots of miles on this thing. I want to go on lots of road trips and just drive the hell out of it. I really want to take it to the 40th anniversary celebration of the Fiero next year, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to do that. But I did say that this thing would be my daily driver. But the thing is, daily driving doesn't really exist for me. Because it's my full-time job to be a YouTuber, I never really go anywhere. I'm either working in the garage or inside working in the office on the edit. I drive a car maybe 3 times a week. And if I do, it's to stores that are less than 5 miles away. And also, as sad as it is for me to say, if I do take a car somewhere, a lot of the time it's my Chevy Cruze. It's the closest thing I have to a truck that can haul 12-foot pieces of lumber. And it's also the only car that I own that has air conditioning. Which is a beautiful segue into what's all gone wrong with the car since finishing it. Well, for starters, the AC went out. Now there wasn't an outright failure of anything, but there was a slow leak. If you remember, I did an R134A conversion on this car and replaced every single seal in the system and got a brand new compressor, so that's all brand new. But what I didn't replace when I absolutely should have were the original soft lines, the rubber lines. They are, what, 36 years old? 37 years old. Rubber that's nearly 4 decades old isn't exactly gonna be good. I literally just experienced this with the GPZ and the oil lines, so yeah, I know that they need to be replaced. And in the same vein of the HVAC system, the fan also started doing this. Though it does usually go away at higher speeds. And speaking of fans, the radiator fan also stopped working for a time period. Well, the fan itself was fine, but it was the relays that went bad. And that relay is a specific like GM relay where it's 2 relays in one. So what I did was got 2 waterproof Bosch style relays and just wired that into the car. And now the fan works with no problem whatsoever. However, right when I repaired the cooling fan, the coolant gauge needle broke in half. Kind of just fell off one day. It's supposed to be like that right there, but it's still reading fine, so that's good. The radio also stopped working. It's not 8:43 right now, it's 9:56 in the morning, but that's totally out of focus. If you set the clock, it'll be wrong in 5 minutes. And also, the radio actually stopped working, the radio component of the stereo. But I've been playing cassette tapes from my parents' collection. So those issues have kind of been like trivial at best, but one that's actually kind of really bothered me is the sunroof. Not the glass itself, but the seal. The seal is a brand new one, but it does not seal. Whenever I drive, there's like so much wind noise, and I've adjusted it to be tighter, but it still persists. Another issue is the sunroof tracks. From the Fiero store, there's also new tracks that hold this in place, but they're already rusting out. God, I have not checked it this much actually. Those are fucking destroyed, holy shit. Look at that. That's just crumbling away. Good God. Brand new, they were painted, ready to install. There's no prep for the actual rails that you had to do. That's just like destroyed, and you would think that's original based on how rusty it is, but no. So it's just really unfortunate. And that's pretty much it for things that have gone wrong with the car since finishing it. Or I guess at least as far as failures of things has gone. There was one thing that happened to the car, but it was after I finished it, but before I released the last episode. There was a period of time when I was writing the script for the last episode where the video just hadn't come out yet, but I finished the car. And in that time, I took the car to the grocery store because I wanted to just enjoy it and use it and have fun with it. And it was very busy because it's right by a school and kids just got out. Basically, I was going down the aisle and a new driver just immediately backs up without looking and backs up right into the Fiero. I screamed very loudly. I cursed a whole lot, but as soon as I got out of the car to see where they hit on the fender, there is virtually no damage. There is the slightest scuff right there, but luckily it's right on the edge of the fender, so like all the highlights are captured there from the sky and everything, and lights from above. So you literally cannot notice it, it blends right in. So it was fine. I realized it was fine like almost immediately, and it was very weird going from like the most anger and scared I've felt in a very long time to immediately, oh no, it's okay. A lot of people asked if I had to go back, would there be anything that I would have done differently? Yeah, absolutely. Just having never restored a car before in my entire life, I did some things that I probably wouldn't do now. The first one is I wish I would have been a lot more patient when doing the final assembly, because I still absolutely hate the little chip I put right at the front edge of the hood. Number 2, same with the paint. I wish I would have done a little bit better of a job. Like most of the panels, like the bumper, hood, fenders turned out really great, but things like the rear clip and the deck lid, not so much. It does look so much better than it did when I bought it, but if it could look better than it is now, then that would be better. But there absolutely is a truth to done being better than perfect, but it wouldn't be bad for it to be a little bit nicer. And the third thing is that I wish I would have done something about all the rusty hardware that I used. In the beginning, I had a I don't care, I just want this thing to move forward attitude. And then later on, I started caring a little bit more and started painting the bolts, but that hasn't really held up super well. So I wish I either got new stainless hardware all around or got the bolts cleaned up and zinc coated like Tommy F. Yaz builds. But again, overall, I am so happy with how this car came out. I mean, for a first time restoration, I think I did a pretty okay job, if I do say so myself. I love you. I tried to answer most of the questions you guys asked, but it was hard to work in a few of them into the video flow, some even not about the Fiero. So I'm gonna do a quick lightning round and get through the scragglers that are still left. Do I have to worry about smog testing for registration? No. Any vehicle in Texas over 25 years old does not have to get tested for emissions. Am I ever going to sell the Fiero? Does it still have trailer tires on it? No. How would the car look in green? Probably green. Can you post a burnout video? Seeing as how the car cannot physically do a burnout, no. How are you, man? You doing good? Where did you bury him? Am I going to paint the Kawasaki GPZ tank? If you're asking this question, that means you did not make it to the end of part 9 of the GPZ series. And I mean the actual end. Are you going to build your own contraption from the ground up? One day, yeah, absolutely. And what I've probably been asked most is, am I going to work on another project car? As you guys probably know, I have been working on the Kawasaki GPZ 1000 RX project for the past year. Right back there. And I have quickly learned that motorcycles are not everyone's cup of tea. I mean, a lot of people like them. There's still hundreds of thousands of people that watch the videos, and there's new people to the channel that found the videos because they prefer motorcycles. But the fact of the matter is that the views in that series are about half that of the Fiero series. Bikes are definitely more niche. So much so that I have had people leave comments and go out of their way to message me to let me know that they're not gonna watch the motorcycle series because they don't care about motorcycles. Now, I like to think that my videos aren't about what I'm working on, but about the work that goes into them. Like, it's the problem solving, the obstacle overcoming, and the storytelling that I put into the videos. So, for those of you that haven't seen the motorcycle series, if you like the Fiero series, you'll probably also like the motorcycle series. But to answer the question, am I going to work on more project cars? Yes. Absolutely yes. You know that twin turbo project I've been teasing for the past 2 years? Well, my brother actually sold the car. But what it was a 2017 V6 Mustang. Back in December of 2019, my brother and I converted it essentially into the EcoBoost V6. Not quite as powerful as the EcoBoost V6 in the Ford GT, but still a lot more power than stock. It was very cool. We plan to do a bunch more to it, but because life is a fickle thing and priorities change, he ended up selling the car before we could finish what we wanted to do. There is still enough footage though to make one complete turbo build episode, so that is gonna happen soon. But besides the one video on that coming out, there's also my 2007 Hyundai Tiburon. Watching Too Much Goon Squad convinced me to buy this thing wrecked at a Copart auction, and watching Too Much Project Binky from Bad Obsession Motorsport convinced me that this project is going to be a lot bigger than initially planned. This is going to be a multi-year project, but it's not coming right away. What's coming in the immediate future is a project car that's been in the background of my videos for quite some time now, and that is my 1978 Datsun 280Z. Also, like the Tiburon, this car was purchased back in 2019, so I've had it for a minute. But I have completely filmed the first episode for this thing, and that is going to be the next upload on the channel, so look forward to that. And for those of you that do like motorcycles, I do have this 1986 Honda VF500F Interceptor that I want to do a full restoration on, as well as my 1967 Kawasaki D1. This is the two-stroke bike that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, there's a whole lot of projects planned for the future, so don't worry. There's one more question, probably one that you've been wondering for a while now while watching this video, and that's where in the heck am I? Well, Elise and I got a place of our own. This is the new home of Fingerprints Workshop, so that means goodbye to the big red barn. Well, I mean, I still
filmed quite a few videos in the Big Red Barn that haven't made it to the channel yet, so you will still see the Big Red Barn in the future. And honestly, the main reason why it took so long to get part 7, 8, and 9 of the Kawasaki GPZ series out is because we were moving here. Elisa and I are doing a full-on renovation in the kitchen, tearing down walls and everything. It's an entire project in and of itself, way bigger than I think anything I've done before. And also getting this garage to be a usable workshop has been a whole project too. We have been filming everything that we've been doing in both places. We are considering starting a second channel for just home stuff because it's very separate from cars and bikes. We did make a channel. It is literally empty, there is nothing there. But if you want to subscribe to it and be notified if and whenever we do upload, I will have a link for that down below in the description. But I'm thinking that the garage workshop stuff might be good for this channel here. Though considering that people didn't like my deviation from cars, I'm not entirely sure people are gonna want to see garage stuff. But if there's enough demand, I'll make it happen. Just let me know. Well, thanks for watching. Now if you excuse me, I have to go bring a 280Z to this house.